Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erica Wade, and I am the board executive here at the South Carolina Real Estate Commission. We're so glad that you were able to join us today. We are pleased to collaborate with the South Carolina Realtors on Agent Safety Month. Safety is our number one priority when it comes to our agents, so it was a no-brainer when we decided to do this collaboration with SCR. I would like to say a special thank you to the team at SCR, a special thank you to the Real Estate Commission team, and also to our presenter, Mr. Daniel Creasap. I won't go into a whole lot about his bio because he has a slide where he will formally introduce himself, but I can tell you this: he has a wealth of knowledge, and he's well experienced when it comes to safety. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dan Creasap, who is our presenter today for our Realtor Safety presentation. Mr. Creasap.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. I appreciate the opportunity. As it is Realtor Safety, they wanted to provide you with a pre-course on how to better protect yourself in your profession. Introducing myself, I'm former infantryman, so that means I was trained to operate in hostile environments and have actually operationally worked in those environments. So learning how to avoid those that wanted to do me harm was part of my profession. I also spent time as a firefighter. I've spent time as a 911 paramedic on the streets. We all know emergency situations can be volatile, so I was trained on how to avoid those situations. I'm a former flight paramedic, and aviation is an inherently dangerous occupation. So we oftentimes learned emergency procedures and how to be safe in those environments. I'm a former critical care paramedic. And as far as education goes, I'm a former training and compliance officer for the largest EMS system in the state, Prisma Health Ambulance Service. So I've spent quite a bit of time in my adult life learning how to operate in these hostile environments. And I would like to teach you guys how to make sure that you are safe and to prevent you from getting injured in situations that you may find yourselves in. So let's talk about the risks of being a realtor. Being realtors, as you guys know, you guys pretty much essentially work on your own. Everybody's got their own business. Everybody's responsible for their own success, but that also means that you're also responsible for your own safety. We all know that most of your clients are strangers. You don't initially have the opportunity to vet them or to figure out who they are, and they are looking to you for some services. As this is your line of work, you rely upon them, the strangers, for your income. Properties for sale can be located anywhere. We know that there are some very secluded areas in the state. I heard somebody was from Aiken, and I have friends that live in Aiken. It's a rural community, and cell signal is not always the strongest out there. And then open houses are advertised publicly. This means that essentially, anyone can go find an open house to find a potential target relatively easily, and you'll have no idea that they meant to do you harm. A real world example of this would be you, King Anita Mui. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm probably not. She was a high-profile realtor in Ontario, and she was relatively successful. She was selling large-scale properties that were, valued at 17 million. So she was an established realtor, had plenty of experience. She was reported missing by her family on August 9th as she went to meet a client. A few hours later, her car was located after the same afternoon she went missing. And then 3 days later, her remains were found. During the investigation, York police found the three youths in possession of her property, although they were not suspected in her death. And then on Wednesday, the police announced that a 47-year-old Mr. Hugh was wanted for first-degree murder in Mui's death. Ontario police believe that Mr. Hugh may have fled the country to Hong Kong. Some of the things that we're going to learn in this class today, had she taken some of these steps, then she either could have been potentially rescued or discovered much sooner, and the person that hurt her could have been captured earlier before he had the chance to leave the country. So as realtor safety is a significant concern, let's go over some key statistics. There are 1.5 million realtors at the beginning of this year, as of January. This number is relatively stable. Initially, when I developed this course a couple of years ago, that number was 1.4 million. But these numbers are staying the same as well. 60,000 may or may not sound like 60,000 agents are victims of violent crimes like assault, sexual abuse, rape, robbery, or murder. Now, 60,000 may not sound like a lot in comparison. That's only 4% of realtors annually, but it means a whole lot more to you if you're one of that 4%. Let's focus on how not to become part of that statistic. Statistics show that 70% of victims are female and 30% are male. Typically, that has to do with the fact that males are physically a lot more stronger and resilient, and females tend to be smaller in nature and easier to manipulate physically. 2023 numbers say that 33% of realtors felt some level of fear or discomfort in the last year. That number's up from 2020 statistics by about a third. In 2020, the number of realtors that said the same thing was only 21%. This means that realtors are finding themselves in situations where they're feeling a lot more unsafe than they were a couple of years ago. Now, there may be a variety of reasons for that increase, but that's not important to the presentation. All that matters in this discussion is that realtors are feeling less safe than they did 3 years ago. So 3 areas that the realtors felt the most threatened were during an open house, while meeting a client at a new property, and while meeting a new client. And the 3 places that realtors were assaulted were during an open house, while meeting a client at a new property, and while in the agent's vehicle with a client. 51% of these assaults occurred after threatening interaction with a prospective client. The point of the slide is to illustrate that your instincts are right the majority of the time. As you can see in the top portion of the slide, during an open house and while meeting a client at a new property, that's where they felt the most threatened. And where they were assaulted was during the open house and while meeting a client at a new property. The one thing that differs between that third bullet point, it says while in the agent's vehicle with a client. This just goes to show you that initially your gut instinct may be right about someone. However, over time, they're able to convince you that they're not a threat. Please be cognizant of that and act accordingly. So how are we going to mitigate risk, right? Be situationally aware. So the National Association of Realtors has a 10-second rule. And that 10-second rule means that whenever you go somewhere, even if you're familiar with the environment, take 10 seconds to observe your surroundings. If you're in your car, remain in your car with the doors locked until you've completed your assessment. Take note of these things, like how many people are there? What activity is going on around you? Where are your entrances and exits? What is the mood or the vibe of the location you're in? How are people reacting to your presence? Do you see any immediate hazards? Do you see any potential hazards? And if you see any of these things, just trust your instincts. If they tell you something's wrong, don't stick around, right? There have been several times where I have in the past walked into a place that I knew I didn't belong. My gut instinct told me I should leave by the reactions on the faces of the people that were around me, and I knew that it was time for me to leave. When you're thinking about being situationally aware, if you have friends that are law enforcement, watch them the next time they go into a public building, right? What are they doing? They typically come into a room. If they wear their sunglasses outside, they wear them inside for a second and then take them off. They give their eyes time to adjust to the room. They're going to take note of where the entrance and exits are. They're going to take note of the number of people. They're going to kind of feel the room out a little bit. And then they're going to take it a step farther than most people would. And they're going to sit somewhere where they can observe everybody in the room. So this NAR 10-second rule is very effective in helping you assess a situation. Try to use it at every opportunity, right? The second thing you can do to mitigate risk is don't go alone. If you have the opportunity to take somebody with you, that's not always possible in this occupation. Several people are busy. You may have multiple showings. It's not always practical, or somebody's not always available to go with you. So if that is the case, then make sure that you're telling somebody what it is that you're doing, where you're going, who you're going to be with, how long you'll be there. Have periodic checks with an individual outside of the event you're doing. For instance, if you have a 2-hour open house, make sure that you have somebody that you can check in with about an hour into the open house to let them know that you're okay. Have an emergency procedure plan in the event something goes wrong. Know what you're going to do, where your exits are, how you're going to get out of that situation, and always have a code word you share with your coworkers or emergency contacts that let you know that you're in distress without alerting attackers to the potential threats. One example of this is while I was in EMS, we used to use what we called 10 codes. So 10 codes would let dispatch know exactly what it was that we were doing without us having to say it out loud for everyone to understand. For instance, 1013 was a meal. If everything was okay, then everything was 10-4. But the code that we had, everybody knew 10-4. The code that we had if we were in distress was 1041. If dispatch heard that we were 1041 on scene, we could say 1041 in a calm tone, and before you knew it, everybody in the world was responding to that call. You would have police, firefighters, and other EMS units coming to help you out because they knew that you were in trouble. Do the same thing today with your friends and family. For instance, if my girlfriend hears me say that I would like a cauliflower crust pizza, she's going to know that is out of character for me and that cauliflower is the code word for me needing immediate assistance. Right? Meeting potential clients, as we discussed, a lot of these people are strangers. So always do your best to provide some layer of insulation between you and that individual. Keep a shroud up regarding your personal life. So try to use your office address and work email for communication with your potential clients. Don't give them your personal information, right? Use all the available resources to research your potential clients before meeting. When you have that initial conversation on the phone or in person, make sure you're getting their name and then use something like Forewarn, Google, social media accounts. Some of you may have girlfriends with great FBI investigative skills that can look back and tell you exactly who a person is, all the way back to the time they opened their first social media account. Use these resources to help know who it is that you're meeting. That way you have a better feel for the level of threat that they may be. Meet in public places that have traffic, right? Understand that not all public places are ideal. We've all seen the movie where you're sitting or where the characters are sitting on a park bench and there's nobody there. They're doing that because they want the seclusion, right? Find some place that has traffic. A coffee shop would be a good place. A restaurant would be a good place. Somewhere where somebody is going to see the two of you together. And if you show up on the evening 6 news as missing, they're going to recognize you and know who you were with. Make sure you told others who you're meeting and how long you expect to be with them, right? If Miss Hugh had done that, then they would have known that she was meeting with a specific individual at a specific place at a specific time. And when they didn't leave or signal that they were leaving, they could have began the search because they knew something had been wrong, right? So let the people that you trust know how long you're going to be there and make sure that you let them know you have left and you're okay. And share your location with those individuals so they can track you in the event you don't appear to be following the plan, right? For instance, if I say I'm going to be in a location and I'm going to be there for a specific amount of time, and then suddenly the dot starts going the other way on their screen and it's out of character and I haven't checked in, they're going to know something's wrong and they'll be able to communicate to emergency services where that dot is moving so that you can be intercepted and hopefully rescued. We talked about meeting in the office, so let's talk about office safety a little bit. Make sure all the doors and windows are locked when you're working alone, right? You want to control who comes in and who comes out in that facility. Obviously, if the doors are locked and they have a key, then it's okay for them to be there. But if they don't have a key and they start breaking into the lock or they start breaking into the windows, that's the time to talk to or notify emergency services. Turn on extra lights and a television or radio in a separate area to make it appear as if you're not alone when you're meeting with somebody else, right? One of the things that we learned in the military was to how to make our forces look larger than they actually were. And the reason we did that was because the larger we looked, or the more we looked in numbers, the larger we looked in numbers, the more hesitant someone was to attack us we in the event that they wanted to do us harm. We wanted them to think twice about what the repercussions could be by attacking somebody or a team that large. So do the same when you're in the office. Turn on the extra lights, turn on the television in a separate office. Occasionally, if you have to, while they're coming in, yell that you're busy, whatever it is to make it look like there's more of you than there actually are. One of the things that we're not very good about is keeping key control, right? Don't give copies of your office key to just anyone. Keep a log of who's authorized to have the keys and to make sure keys are collected if someone leaves the organization. If someone leaves the organization and they take their key with them, make sure you're changing the locks. Remember, they don't belong there anymore. No matter how much you like them, make sure you know who has control of those keys. If there's a security system in place, perform your monthly functions checks and address failures as soon as possible. How many times have we witnessed on TV and TV shows where they have the camera up, but it wasn't able to catch the robbery because the cameras haven't worked? Make sure that's not what's going on in your building. Those cameras and that security system is there for a reason. So make sure it stays operational. It's a level of protection that is very helpful in deterring crime. Always meet your prospective clients in your office or in a public space. We discussed that a little bit. Have the code word. For instance, mine was cauliflower. But here's another thing. Most importantly, look out for each other. I know we're all in a very competitive business, but please do your best to make sure that you and your friends are all right. So let's go into a scenario. Let's say you're meeting a new client. And this new prospect agrees to meet you at your office on a Saturday to fill out the pre-qualifying information forms. He's looking for a home in a wealthy neighborhood, and though he lists his occupation as a banker, he's wearing scruffy jeans and a work t-shirt. He gives you an odd look when you request his license and registration, and he tells you that he'll have to go to the car to get the registration and asks why you need that. So what is it that you're going to do? Well, this one's kind of a trick question. There's no need for more or less caution in this scenario. This guy has already agreed to meet you first at an office and appears to be willing to provide the information that you need, right? He's going to identify himself. Most of your prospects will simply be who they say they are. They're somebody looking for you to help them find a new home. So don't be overly cautious and kind of gauge how willing an individual is to comply with their identification and what they're willing to do to help you out. He says he's a banker. He's wearing scruffy jeans and a t-shirt. Think Mark Zuckerberg here, right? This guy wore a sweatshirt for the vast majority of the time he was building wealth. This guy could be the same way. It's a Saturday. He's a banker and he's off duty. So there's nothing really to be suspicious of here. And remember, selling's about building relationships. And that's tough to do if you're treating potential prospects as if there's somebody out to do you harm. Never compromise your safety issues, but remember to treat people with courtesy and respect just as you would like to be treated. So open houses. This is one of the places where people were attacked the most, right? Things we can do to prepare for these open houses are to make sure your phone's charged prior to hosting the open house. Take a power bank along if you need to. I know a lot of people that have gone into open houses where the battery level was long enough to last for the 2 hours of the duration of the open house. But start thinking about what would happen if they were abducted. If their battery level is only good for that couple of hours and then they're planning on charging it after the open house and they get abducted, that phone won't be functional in the event they have the ability to use it while they've been abducted, right? You want to be able to record sounds. You want to be able to make phone calls. You want to be able to share your location with other individuals in the event you have been abducted. So make sure that your phone is fully charged. All right. Also check your signal strength at these locations. understand that a lot of these places that we may go throughout the state are rural and they may not have the best cell signal. So know where your cell signal strengths are. The other thing is making sure, again, to communicate with others where you're going to be and how long you're going to be there, and then being able to communicate when you have signal. So pay attention to how much signal strength you have in these locations. Another thing is put the phone away. I've been to open houses several times, and I know how tempting it is to scroll through Instagram or Facebook or any of your other social media accounts. Maybe you got a kid's birthday on Saturday and you have to Amazon Prime in order to get the gift there on time, right? It's very tempting to be distracted by our cell phones while we are in an open house. But just remember situational awareness. If we're focused on the phone, then we're not focused on the potential threats that could be stepping through the door or trying to break through a window, right? Make sure you're visiting the home ahead of time. Part of situational awareness is knowing your environment. So go the day before and to take a good look at any potential hazards that are in the area, right? Know the layout of the home. If you were held captive at night and you weren't aware of the hazards and you didn't pay attention during the daylight, that's like adding an extra chair to a dark room at night as you're trying to sneakily make your way to the refrigerator to grab a snack without your kids knowing. That's not going to end well. You're going to end up having to share your snacks with your kids. So, same thing goes with these open houses. Make sure that you're aware of all the threats so that in the event something does happen, you know how to react. Track the number of people and the names of the people that are coming in. Have an attendance sheet and make sure that your visitors are signing in. This is good for two reasons. Number one, if they do abduct you, the odds are they're not going to think to grab that sheet. So somebody's going to have a record of who was there during the time that you were. And secondly, we're going to have it there for lead generation, right? We're all looking for other opportunities to create more business for ourselves. Secondly, observe the people that are lingering in the home. Maybe they have questions, maybe they have ulterior motives. We don't know. And if you have other people that are in that open house, go ahead and make sure that they're aware of that individual as well. Just say hello, draw attention to them, let the other people in the home know that they're there. If somebody feels like they can be identified as having been present in that open house the same time they were, they're less likely to choose you as a victim because now the odds of them getting caught are more elevated. Keep control of your entrance and exit points, just like anything else, especially the office. You want to know who's coming in and who's going out. So don't open up everything for everybody to walk through. Make sure that you have one entrance point in, one entrance point out, and really kind of keep control of your environment so that you know what's going on. Now, that's not to say that you should not have an exit plan. Your exit plan could be completely different, and perhaps you will have a sliding glass door or something that leads to a patio that you may need to leave open. But just be aware of that, okay? Try to limit those egress points as much as possible. And egress, don't park in front of the driveway. Many times I've gone to an open house and I can see somebody that's backed into a driveway or pulled into a driveway. And what that does is that really opens up the opportunity for somebody to park in front of you and limit your ability to leave by vehicle. Instead, park along the curb. If you park along the curb, then it's going to take a minimum of two vehicles and it parked one parked in front of you and one parked behind you in order to block you in. Whereas in the driveway, all it takes is one, and that opens you up to an assault. So here's a scenario. You're at the open house by yourself on a winter day, and as the sun is setting and you're locking up, a nicely dressed man pulls into the drive and quickly hops out of his car. He apologizes for coming so late and says that he's very glad to have arrived before you left. He begs you to let him see the property, as he has wanted to buy this style of home in this neighborhood for some time now. You've had very few prospects visit the open house, so you would hate to miss the opportunity. So what are you going to do? Well, open houses are especially dangerous because they expose you to the strangers, often while alone, with a limited opportunity to pre-qualify the prospect or verify his identity, right? You should take extra care at the end of the day, especially when predators make sure that they are more sure that you're likely to be alone. There are enough red flags here to warrant not going back into the house with him, right? This guy is pulled up to the open house at the end of the open house time and has asked you to allow him to see the home. He knows he is the last person there and he is alone with you. So pay attention to that. That is a red flag. Okay. Don't let his clothes influence your behavior either. A lot of people that intend to do harm will often dress in a way that is going to disarm you. Somebody that is nicely dressed tends to not raise red flags or suspicions as quickly as someone that's dressed like um, a lot more scruffily, right? If you do let him see the house, do not follow him in. Wait for him in the doorway or in your car so you can easily escape, right? You can open the door for him, let him in, wait for him, and then as he leaves, you can lock up behind him. Make sure he has gotten into his vehicle and he has left before you locked up. Okay. While you're locking and unlocking doors, you are focused on that task and not paying attention to the situation that's going on around you. That's when it's very easy for somebody to sneak up on you. Showing listings isn't a whole lot different than open houses, right? Um, you're going to use available research resources to research your potential clients prior to the meeting. Um, Now you're to the point though where you have an established relationship with this client, even if you've only met them one time. One of the things that you can utilize in order to kind of screen your applicants at this point when you're starting to show the listings is making sure that your client gets pre-qualified. Listen, guys, use your lender to do a background check on these people. Get them to be pre-qualified before you even show them the house. They're going to be able, your lender's going to be able to identify who they are through their IDs. We're going to be able to identify where they work by their W-2s and their pay stubs, going to be able to gauge the reliability of this individual by their credit scores. They're going to have an in-depth look at this person's financial situation and probably personal situation. And they're going to be a great tool for you to screen these individuals to see if they're actually serious about buying the house or if they're not. And if they don't cooperate with your lender, you should be a little suspicious as to their motives, right? Again, make sure your phone is charged prior to leaving to visit the properties. Check your cell phone signal strengths during the visit of the property. Have your emergency numbers pre-programmed, right? A lot of you may not know this, but if you have an iPhone, you can go into settings to set a 5-click on the side of your phone that will activate a phone call to emergency services, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Make sure your phone is put away while you're doing the showing. Again, you don't want any distractions. Um, Try to visit the property ahead of time. That way you have done the recon. It's not always optimal. It's um, not always practical, but sometimes you can use things like Google Maps, Google Earth to kind of look at the property beforehand to get an idea of your entrance and egress points. Sometimes you can look at the photos of the listing to be able to figure out where doors are. Just try to do a little recon before you go in. And the other thing, remember the third place that people were attacked were in their own vehicle while they were with the client. So if possible, take 2 cars, right? This allows you to leave if anything looks suspicious or if anything is going sideways on you, and you don't have to fight somebody in your vehicle or in their vehicle, right? So here's a scenario showing the listing. So on your first day with this prospect, you showed him 3 homes and he acted like a typical buyer, asking all the expected questions and looking carefully at each home. On this occasion, it's a cold day. He offers to drive you since his car is already warmed up. He mentions that he would really like to see a home with a basement bedroom for his teenage son so he can play his music as loud as he likes. You know a house that fits his needs perfectly, so you take him there to show him nicely finished basement with a rec room, bedroom, and a full bath. Right? So what is the situation? Are there any red flags here? Well, First off, don't let the fact that he acted normally on the other showings cause you to let your guard down, right? Um, he may have been setting you up for failure in a way that he acted completely normal at these other three listings that weren't right for him, but now he's found the ideal spot to take you. And maybe that's why he wants to see this home with this basement. He already knows it exists. He just wants you to show it to him so that he has the opportunity to be in that environment with you, right? Unless you know him personally, don't ride with a client, right? Drive your own car and park so you can get away easily if you need to. We've already talked about parking in the street and not in the driveway. Even in remote areas of the house with the best features, re resist the urge to lead a prospect into this environment. Okay, let them explore those areas on their own. Um, if you have to, follow them only as far as the doorway so they can't block your exit. In areas where possible, always keep something or some type of furniture or item between you and the individual with nothing between you and the exit. Give them an obstacle to negotiate in the event they try to charge you. While I was working in EMS, one of the things that I would always do is make sure that I had my jump bag and my oxygen caddy between me and the client. And the reason that I did this was I always wanted to give them something to trip over or something that they had to jump over in order to get to me. And I always made sure that I was the closest person to the door. The goal here is for me to make it to the exit faster than they can make it to me. And that is one of the things that I always taught all of my EMT students to do as well. Right. And always have your escape route plan to make sure the exit doors are unlocked for the room so that you can get out as quickly as possible. Right. Never let somebody lock a door behind you. Never let somebody corner you into a position where they are between you and the exit. In the event that something does go wrong, if you have an emergency incident plan, implement it as soon as practical. And the reason I say as soon as practical is because you're not always going to have time to enact a specific plan or protocol. Your first rule should be to either run, hide, or fight, right? We've all heard this slogan, but let's really kind of break this down for a second. The best thing that you can do when faced with a threat is put as much distance between you and the threat as possible. And that's where the run portion comes in. Try to get away from them as quickly as possible to avoid any physical conflict. If you are running or you can't run from a specific threat, find a good place to hide. They can't harm you if they can't find you. Okay. So find somewhere that you're able to hide and then initiate emergency communications. And if you have to, well, then you're going to have to fight. Just remember that you are not in a situation where somebody has any rules. So you shouldn't fight with those rules either. This is a fight for your life. And in the event that you end up in this fight, the only way to ensure that you're going to survive is to fight with everything that you have and to violate every rule you were ever taught about fighting with your siblings. Okay. Don't be afraid to make strikes that are going to truly incapacitate your assailant. Eyes are a great target. There are self-defense courses out there that will teach you a lot more than I can in just this little webinar. But trust me, you're going to want to fight for your life because that's exactly what you're doing. And then the third point is to communicate as soon as practical, right? While I was in aviation, the rule was very simple. If you found yourself in an emergency setting, the first responsibility was to fly the aircraft. Make sure that the aircraft is going to make it to the ground safely. Do everything in your power to make that happen. And then, if it was practical, your job was to communicate with air traffic control. And our job was very simple. It was to give our heading, our airspeed, and the point that we were at now, right? So that they could calculate where we would land. The same thing happens here. First, handle the emergency situation, and then as soon as you possibly can, communicate to the emergency dispatch center exactly what it is that's happened and what help you need. And be very specific, okay? So what are realtors doing to protect themselves? One of the things that I found between the 2020 National Association of Realtors handout and this year's for 2023 is pretty much the statistics are staying the same. Everyone is pretty much holding the same pattern that they have. There have been like 1% to 2% fluctuations in what people are doing. But one of the things that I saw the most was 67% are using smartphone safety apps. That number's up pretty significantly from when I initially did the presentation or put together the presentation, almost by 12 to 13%. So the availability of technology has really made it a lot easier for you guys to remain safe or to communicate. And I think that's extraordinary. Find My iPhone is still the most prolific, followed by Google location sharing, SentryKey, Forewarn, and HomeSnap Pro. Those seem to be the top ones that are being used. I found that 50% of realtors are carrying some type of self-defense weapons. That number is only up by about 2 to 3% from the last time that I put together this presentation. 18% admit to carrying pepper spray. 14% are carrying a firearm. 9% carrying a knife. 4% are carrying a taser. 2% are carrying a club or an asp, and 9% would not disclose what they were doing for personal safety. One of the things that I would like to point out when it comes to having these items for self-defense, they're only good if you know how to use them. So if you are carrying any of these self-defense weapons, please, please practice with them and make sure that you're proficient enough to be able to use them when the time comes. The time to learn is not during the emergency. You need to be prepared for the emergency by practicing ahead of time. 38% are attending self-defense classes. That number is actually up from the high 20% that was done in the last presentation, and 20% have attended a safety course. So for those of you that are here, congratulations, you're in the minority. Please spread the word to other realtors to really take a safety course, and so that they're more safe in their job. So for conclusion, be situationally aware, right? Follow National Association of Realtors 10-second rule and trust your instincts. Your instincts are oftentimes correct. Remember, don't go alone. If you have to go alone, make sure that everybody knows. Make sure your phone's charged prior to performing any realtor activities. Take a power bank along if it's necessary. Make sure you're putting your phone away while you're at the open houses or during a showing. Don't get distracted. Stay aware of your surroundings. When practical, visit the property ahead of time. Make sure you know where you're going, what the environment it is, what it looks like, and what you need to do in the event there is an emergency, where you need to go. Keep control of your entrance and exit points. Remember, you want to be able to limit the number of people or the number of directions that people are coming towards you from. If possible, take 2 cars. Remember, the third place that people were attacked was in the cars. If you can, meet them there instead of driving with them. Never give out your personal information. Be cautious about using social media. A lot of us like to post the things that are important to us. I know I am guilty of that, but if you're doing that, you're showing them where your vulnerabilities are. Make sure you have a professional page that you can use instead. Never always meet your prospective clients in your office or in a public space. Always have a code word you want to share with code workers or emergency contacts in the event that something goes wrong. And like I said, most importantly, make sure you're taking care of each other. We're all in this to make money, but let's make sure that we're also in this for the humanity of it, right? We're here to help people find homes. We're here to help people realize their dreams. And we shouldn't be in competition with each other when we're concerned with each other's welfare. We want everybody to survive and succeed. So I want to thank you guys for attending. If you guys have any questions, my personal email is on there, even though I said not to use it. My personal email is on there, and you can also text me. My phone number is on there as well. I'm more than happy to share the slide deck. I'm more than happy to come to a brokerage to do this presentation for your office. And I hope you guys are going to have a wonderful, wonderful day and a wonderful September. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. Um, I'm going to open it up for questions or comments now.
Thank you, Mr. Creasap, for such a informative presentation, and listening to everything that you talked about today. Some of these things we could use in our own personal day-to-day lifestyle. Some of the key things that stood out to me is situational awareness, like you mentioned, and also to track, observe, control, and egress. And also don't let the clothes of the individual cause you to let your guard down. So I just want to say thank you so much for this presentation today. Again, the chat is open, so if there are any questions, we're going to go ahead and go through them and see. Let's see here. Okay, forewarn. So Sharon Stone is talking about forewarn. Forewarn is the SER member benefit. To find out more about the forewarn, you can go to southscrealtors.org/forewarn. Also, for information on Realtor Safety Month, you can also visit the website, www.nar.realtor.safety. It's asking, can you drop the names of the safety apps again? Can you go over the names of the safety apps again, Mr. Creasap?
Yes, as soon as I find that slide. I will say that Forewarn is a spectacular app. A friend of mine that was a realtor actually looked me up by utilizing Forewarn before she met with me because we didn't know each other very well. And it was able to pull up the year that I ended up with 14 speeding tickets in my early 20s. And I was very surprised at the accuracy of the information that was given there. So it is a spectacular app. Let's see. Where was it? Do we have any other questions while I'm looking this information up?
Yes, another question that came up was what is the phone emergency? You were going to explain. And also, yes, that's the other question that came in the box.
Okay. So starting out with the other apps, people are using Find My iPhone. It's the most prolific because it's free. It's typically on your Apple devices. Anybody can use it if you're linked into them. Google location sharing is done pretty much with the Samsung devices or anything that is non-Apple related because, it pretty much does the same function. Sentry Key, I'm not really familiar with, but it was one of those that was listed in the National Association of Realtors report. Same with the HomeSnap Pro. So if you want to write those down, those were the ones that were the most commonly used. I would say over 80% of what was listed as far as safety apps, this is what people were using.
Also, another question that's in the chat box that asks, are there legal restrictions on carrying pepper spray?
So legal restrictions on pepper spray, not that I am aware of. I believe you have to be over the age of 18, but I'm not 100% sure on that. That would be a better question for somebody that deals with concealed weapons. Going back to how to utilize your iPhone with the 5-click procedure. If you wanted to do this, you would go to settings, you would go to emergency SOS in those settings. You would toggle the call with the 5 button presses. It's called call with 5 button. You would toggle that switch And then you can choose if you want to call quietly or not towards the bottom of that screen. One of the things I want to point out here is sometimes it can help if the assistant knows you've called for help. That will help deter them from any further action. And sometimes it just enrages them, right? And so you don't know what that response is going to be. So really the preference is yours. There's no way to know what someone else is going to do if they know you called for emergency services.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have in the box. Again, I just want to say thank you again, Mr. Creasap, for such an informative presentation today. Again, I think this presentation will be on the website for SCR if you want to go back and visit it again. Thank you again to SCR staff and the South Carolina Real Estate Commission. And we just want to say, have a good day and be safe. Thank you all.